For decades, the world wondered why Michael Jackson did the things he did, why he became a recluse, why he changed his appearance, why he seemed so tortured. Despite all his success, Madonna knew the answer. She'd known since 1993, when Michael called her in tears at 2 a.m. and made her promise something that terrified her. If he died first, she had to tell everyone the truth. The real truth. Not the tabloid stories, not the rumors, but the actual reason behind everything. When Michael died in 2009, Madonna kept her promise, and what she revealed explained 30 years of mystery in a single, heartbreaking truth. It was February 14th, 1993, Valentine's Day. While most people were celebrating love, Michael Jackson was having one of the worst nights of his life. The tabloids had been vicious for months. They'd printed stories about his appearance, calling him a freak. They'd made up lies about his personal life. They'd turned him into a punchline. And that week had been particularly brutal. A major magazine had run a cover story with a photo of Michael's face morphing into something inhuman. Michael was at Neverland Ranch, alone except for his staff. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. He was spiraling into a darkness that terrified even him. At 2 in the morning, he picked up the phone and called the only person he thought might understand. The only other person on the planet who lived under that same crushing level of scrutiny. Madonna. She answered on the third ring, her voice groggy. "Michael, what's wrong?" "I can't do this anymore," Michael said, and Madonna immediately sat up in bed. She'd never heard him sound like this before. Broken. "Where are you? Are you safe?" "I'm at Neverland. I'm alone." "Madonna, I need to tell someone the truth. The real truth. Because, if I don't tell someone, I think I'm going to lose my mind." "Then tell me," Madonna said gently. "Whatever it is, Michael, you can tell me." For the next 3 hours, Michael Jackson told Madonna things he'd never told anyone. Not his family, not his doctors, not his closest friends. He told her everything. He started with his childhood. Everyone knew his father, Joe Jackson, had been strict. But Michael revealed just how bad it had really been. The beatings weren't just discipline. They were brutal, sustained abuse that left him terrified of his own father well into adulthood. Joe would tell young Michael that he was ugly, that his nose was too big, that he'd never be good enough. Those words planted seeds that grew into a lifetime of self-hatred. Then Michael told Madonna about the vitiligo. This was before the world knew the truth. Back in 1993, everyone thought Michael was deliberately changing his skin color. They called him a race traitor. They said he wanted to be white. The truth was so much simpler and so much more painful. Michael had vitiligo, an autoimmune disease that causes patches of skin to lose pigmentation. It had started when he was in his 20s, and it was progressive. The patches spread and merged until his skin tone became uneven and blotchy. He'd tried everything to cover it: makeup, dermatological treatments, staying out of the sun. But eventually, his doctors told him the only option was depigmentation therapy to even out his skin tone. It wasn't a choice about wanting to be white. It was a medical necessity to stop looking like a patchwork quilt. But the media didn't care about the truth. They created a narrative and ran with it. Michael also told Madonna about the lupus, the chronic pain that never went away, the medications he needed just to function, the surgeries that had gone wrong and left him dependent on painkillers. "Every time I look in the mirror," Michael said, his voice breaking, "I see someone I don't recognize. I see my father's voice telling me I'm ugly. I see the disease eating away at my skin. I see the surgeries that were supposed to fix things but made them worse. And then I see the tabloids turning me into a monster. Madonna was crying by this point. Michael, why haven't you told people the truth? Because it won't matter, Michael said. They don't want the truth. They want the freak show. They want the weirdo who sleeps in a hyperbaric chamber and wants to buy the elephant man's bones. They've already decided who I am. Then why are you telling me? There was a long pause. When Michael spoke again, his voice was different, calmer, more resolved. Because I need someone to know the truth, he said. I need someone who will remember me as a human being, not as the monster they created. And I need to know that if something happens to me, if this all gets too much and I can't keep going, someone will tell the world that I wasn't what they said I was. Michael, don't talk like that. Nothing's going to happen to you. You don't know that. Madonna, I'm not okay. I haven't been okay for a long time, and I need to know that if I die, whether it's tomorrow or 50 years from now, someone will tell the truth about why I became the person I became. Madonna felt a chill run through her. What are you asking me? I'm asking you to make a promise. If I die first, you tell everyone the truth. Everything I just told you. You explain why I did the things I did. You make them understand that I wasn't running away from who I was. I was running away from the pain of being me. And if I die first, then I'll do the same for you. I'll tell them about the struggles you've never talked about publicly, the things you hide behind the provocateur persona. We both know what it's like to be reduced to a caricature. So let's make a pact. Whoever survives tells the truth about the other. No matter what people think, no matter how it looks, we tell the truth. Madonna thought for a long moment. What Michael was asking wasn't simple. It was a burden, a responsibility. But as she sat there in her bed, listening to one of the most famous people in the world break down over the phone, she understood why he needed this. Okay, she said finally. I promise, if you die first, I'll tell them everything. I'll make sure people understand. You swear? I swear on my children's lives, Michael. I'll keep your secret until the day you die, and then I'll tell the world the truth. Thank you, Michael whispered. Thank you for seeing me. They talked for another hour after that, about lighter things. Madonna made him laugh a few times, which felt like a small miracle. By the time they hung up, the sun was starting to rise. For the next 16 years, Madonna kept that promise. She never told anyone about that phone call. She never hinted at the truth Michael had shared with her. When the tabloids got worse, when the accusations got uglier, when the world seemed determined to destroy Michael Jackson, Madonna stayed silent. But she never forgot. She watched from a distance as Michael's life became more isolated, more tragic. She saw him retreat further into Neverland Ranch, surrounding himself with children because they were the only ones who didn't judge him. She saw the 2005 trial break something fundamental in him. She watched as the painkillers that were supposed to help him function became the thing he couldn't function without. And she watched as Michael Jackson slowly disappeared from public life, becoming more ghost than man. On June 25, 2009, Madonna was in London, in the middle of rehearsals for her Sticky and Sweet tour. Her assistant knocked on her dressing room door with a strange look on her face. "You need to see the news," her assistant said. Madonna turned on the television and saw the breaking news banner. Michael Jackson dead at 50. She felt the room tilt. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Then the full weight of what had just happened hit her. Michael was gone, and she'd made him a promise. For days after Michael's death, Madonna couldn't speak publicly about it. She released a brief statement through her publicist, the same generic celebrity grief that everyone else was expressing. but privately, she was wrestling with the promise she'd made 16 years earlier. Should she really do this? Michael was gone. He couldn't be hurt anymore by what people said about him. Maybe the merciful thing was to let him rest in peace and let the mystery stay a mystery. But then she'd remember his voice on that phone call. I need someone to remember me as a human being, not as the monster they created. 2 weeks after Michael's death, Madonna did an interview with a journalist she trusted. It wasn't at the funeral that would have been too public, too performative. It was a quiet, intimate conversation in a private room. I want to tell you something about Michael, Madonna said. Something he made me promise to reveal if he died first. The journalist leaned forward. Madonna took a deep breath and told the story. The 2 a.m. phone call, the childhood abuse, the vitiligo, the lupus, the chronic pain, the way his father's voice had lived in his head his entire life, telling him he was ugly, telling him he wasn't good enough. Everything Michael did, Madonna explained. Every choice he made that seemed strange to the outside world was about one thing: escaping pain, physical pain from the disease and the medications, emotional pain from the abuse and the trauma, and the pain of never being allowed to be human. She told the journalist about the plastic surgeries, how they hadn't been about vanity or self-hatred of his race. They'd been about trying to fix what he saw as the ugliness his father had always pointed out, about trying to look in the mirror and see someone other than the boy his father had beaten. She explained how the skin lightening wasn't a choice to be white. It was a medical response to a disease that was literally taking his color away in patches. Michael became a recluse because the world turned him into a freak show, Madonna said, her voice shaking. They took a man who was in genuine physical and emotional pain, and they mocked him for it. They turned his medical conditions into punchlines. They turned his trauma responses into evidence that he was weird or dangerous. The journalist was quiet for a long moment. Why are you telling me this now? Because Michael made me promise, and because I think the world needs to understand that they killed him long before his heart stopped beating. They killed him with every cruel headline, every mocking late-night joke, every disgusted look. They took one of the most talented artists of our generation, and they tortured him for being human. Madonna wiped tears from her eyes. Michael Jackson wasn't a freak. He wasn't a monster. He was a man who was in pain his entire life, and instead of showing him compassion, the world made his pain worse. That's the truth. That's what Michael wanted people to know. The interview was published a month later, and the response was immediate and overwhelming. Some people were skeptical. They thought Madonna was rewriting history or trying to defend the indefensible. But many more people saw the interview as the missing piece of a puzzle they'd been trying to solve for decades. Suddenly, everything made sense. The reclusiveness, the changes in appearance, the obsession with childhood innocence, the self-isolation. It wasn't the behavior of a guilty person or a crazy person. It was the behavior of someone who was profoundly traumatized and in constant pain, trying desperately to survive in a world that refused to see him as human. Medical professionals came forward confirming that vitiligo could indeed cause the kind of pigmentation changes Michael had experienced. Trauma experts talked about how childhood abuse could manifest in the exact patterns of behavior Michael had displayed. Pain management specialists discussed how chronic pain and the medications used to treat it could lead to the dependencies Michael had struggled with. The narrative started to shift. Not completely. There were still people who believed the worst about Michael Jackson, but for many people, Madonna's revelation recontextualized 30 years of Michael's life. It turned the wacko-jacko tabloid caricature back into a human being. Years later, a journalist asked Madonna if she regretted keeping the secret for so long. "Every day," Madonna said without hesitation. "I regret that I didn't speak up while Michael was alive. Maybe if more people had understood what he was going through, they would have shown him more compassion. Maybe he'd still be here. But Michael made you promise to wait until after he died. I know, and I kept my promise. But that doesn't mean I don't wonder what would have happened if I'd broken it. If I'd told the world the truth when Michael was still alive, to hear people's reactions. When he was still alive, to see some small measure of understanding and compassion." She paused, looking out a window. "Michael spent his entire life being misunderstood, and I had the key to helping people understand him, but I kept it locked away because that's what he asked me to do. I honored his wish, but I'll never stop wondering if that was the right choice." The truth is, we'll never know if earlier revelation would have changed anything for Michael. The tabloid machine might have ignored it or twisted it. The cruelty might have continued regardless. But what we do know is this: Madonna kept her promise. When Michael Jackson died, she didn't let the world forget him as a punchline or a cautionary tale. She reminded everyone that behind the sequined glove and the moonwalk, behind the bizarre headlines and the shocking allegations, there was a human being who suffered more than most of us could imagine. Michael Jackson's story isn't a story about fame or talent or even tragedy. It's a story about pain, physical, emotional, and spiritual pain, and about a world that mistook someone's suffering for entertainment. And it's a story about loyalty, about a promise made between two people who understood what it meant to live under impossible scrutiny. About one friend honoring another friend's last wish, even when it would have been easier to stay silent. Today, there's a different understanding of Michael Jackson emerging. People talk less about the tabloid controversies and more about the artist, the humanitarian, the man who was dealt an impossible hand and played it the best way he knew how. That shift didn't happen by accident. It happened because Madonna kept a promise made during a 2 a.m. phone call in 1993. Because she was brave enough to tell a truth that the world didn't want to hear. Because she saw Michael Jackson as a human being when the rest of the world had decided he was a monster. If this story changed how you see Michael Jackson, or reminded you that even legends are human beings with real pain, hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. Share this with someone who needs to hear that compassion matters more than judgment. Drop a comment about a time when someone kept a promise to you when it mattered most. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more incredible true stories that remind us that behind every headline is a human being who deserves to be understood.